Welcome to the Escape and Empower podcast. Escape from the corporate rat race to empowered franchise ownership. Are you ready to take control of your destiny, follow your dreams, and live life on your own terms? Join our hosts, Dave and Pete, for insights on how to break free from the corporate grind, ditch the 9-to-5, and step into empowered franchise ownership.
Good morning and welcome to the Escape and Empower podcast. My name is Dave Greenberg. I am a co-host of this wonderful podcast with my friend Pete.
Good morning, Dave.
How are you, Pete?
Oh, I'm pumped up.
You always are. You give me energy every day. You know, energy is a key word when I start thinking about the subject for today. You know, how to master a professional transition with confidence. Sometimes it can totally suck the life out of you. You know, all of a sudden you're faced with a professional transition. It can be by choice or it can be by circumstance. But many times, both you and I, Pete, have been in this position, and people that we talk to every week that engage in our process, they find themselves thinking or in a transition. And what we're here to talk to our audience today is about how to approach it.
There's no question about it, right? And no matter how it happens, at some point in time, you're going to get thrown into career transition. You're going to be in transition. And it may be your choice or it may be a company's choice. But bottom line is that we have to start thinking about that it is part of everything. Change happens. And so if we can be prepared, we can go into it with the right attitude, we have a much better chance of coming out of it in a more successful way.
You know, as you jump into this, you know, there's a lot of things swirling around. You got your support network and you're talking to your friends, you're preparing your resume, or you're looking at your balance sheet and understanding how much cash you have, determine what kind of runway you want to have. What would be the first step or advice for a first step you would give someone in a transition?
First, just step back and take a deep breath. Right? Just, all right. No, really, because you're now on a journey and you got to start by educating yourself. And you've got to put some time in to start learning, whether you're going to redo your resume, that kind of stuff. Understand, how do I get my resume redone? Or if I want to start looking for businesses, what are ways in which I can do that? But it's taking a step back and just learning and creating that library of resources. And that can be actual physical resources, but it also can be others, like connecting with people that maybe have been through a transition before.
I think that's so important because it takes time. You got to take that deep breath that you've talked about. You got to settle down. You got to figure out, okay, how do I learn? How do I position myself? How do I start thinking about my approach? So educating yourself is just fantastic. The second thing,
let's go back on that, because I think you have to have the right attitude, because you know, like when I left, I was pissed, right? And you got to just deal with that anger, right? I couldn't believe I was in that situation. And so as you're kind of educating yourself, you also have to kind of balance yourself out a little bit. Having that attitude, like, it doesn't matter how this happened. It's about this idea of really kind of just settling down to get ready for a process.
I was pissed, and I also started to doubt myself, honestly, because, you know, if it's not on your terms and it's on their terms, you're like, well, what the hell did I do wrong? Where did I miss? You know, how did I fail? That's tough when you self-assessments hurt sometimes. Every time I've come out of it is like, I didn't fail. I was doing really well. I have all the tool sets to succeed, or I wouldn't be where I am. You're right. You need to pick it up, and you need to move out of that mindset that it was you and start thinking about everything you have to add to the process to take the next step.
It really ties to the second step, right? It's this whole idea of cultivating hope. You're not entitled to your next position, your next opportunity, right? You have to go out there. But you and I have talked about this before on prior podcasts, right? It's having a mindset of gratitude. It's being in the right things. And, you know, we've talked about affirmations and, you know, kind of that starting to get yourself ready for the journey, getting in shape. When I left the corporate world, I got to tell you, I started getting in shape. My blood pressure immediately went down. So yeah, you have to get that right mindset, cultivating that hope and getting yourself ready for the journey. And
as you're doing that self-reflection starts talking about the skill sets that you have and thinking about the accomplishments you've made to build that confidence. You know, our friend Daryl back at Ford was always tell us hope isn't a strategy, but hope, it can be very powerful thing. You can't get hooked on it, but hope is big because it brings you this confidence, and every candidate in the process gets energy from looking at becoming a business owner, possibly through franchising. And other opportunities always start to grow because you find yourself with that confidence, and people read that. And then at the same time, if you need help, get help. There's nothing wrong with professional support. Therapy can be absolutely invaluable in challenging times.
And having an idea of this hope that there's opportunity out in the world, being open to what comes to you is a big deal, right? And if we're mad, we're frustrated and all that kind of stuff, you have to be open, for lack of better terms, the universe. And you don't know which direction you're going to go, but you have to be open to it. And I'm a kind of a, let's have the glass half full rather than half empty. Look at the good things that you have in your life and focus on how we continue to go forward in a way that's positive and it has good energy. Because again, the way in which you walk into a room, your energy, the way in which you walk into a conversation, you have the right attitude and you're open to learning and exploring and all that kind of stuff, that will carry you so much further than being kind of shut down and angry and not grateful.
I agree with Austin, especially the gratitude thing, which I know we are super focused on every day. The other thing I think about, Pete, is make sure you're realistic on your expectations. These things take time. You have to give yourself some grace to navigate through it. They can take a toll. So balance your optimism with realism and, set realistic expectations. Can you agree?
Oh, absolutely, right? If you're going to pick another corporate job, it's going to take some time. That's just part of it. If you're going to invest in a business, it doesn't automatically replace your corporate income in 2 months. I'm sorry, it doesn't do that, right? So you have to kind of have this mindset of that it's going to take time, realistic time, and you have to kind of prepare for that with the expectation. And I'll just give you my example, right? So when I decided not to go back into the corporate world, that I was going to invest in a franchise, I decided that I had left my corporate income, a very high income, and I was going to invest in a junk roll franchise. And I bought the rights to 3 states to be a master franchisee. And I had a family of 6. I had 4 young kids. We had a mortgage, all that kind of stuff. But I still elected to go in and invest in the business, but I knew it was going to take time. So I planned for that time. I had a realistic expectation that it was going to take some time. So I've told you my 2-bucket strategy. I created the bucket for the investment of the business. Then I also created a bucket to cover my living expenses, offset those until the business got to me where I wanted to go, right? So I had realistic expectations that it was going to take time so that I could be able to do it in the right way and set up everything so that I was in a good position to succeed.
And that same thing goes for, you just talked about your personal approach to transition. And when you think of that and start exploring franchise opportunities, it's the same thing. It's just you're going to do it again as you're building your plans and doing your investigation, talking to other franchisees and looking at the business model you've built out and understanding your working capital and your ramp to profitability. You start building a profitable business over years, not months. Every business has a different ramp to profitability or free cash flows, but you need to understand that timeline just as you're doing so for your transition. As you start planning to become a franchise owner for a particular franchise that you're really starting to fall in love with. And when you think of those timelines, you got to also think of the finances, just like your personal finances. Now you have the business finances. What are your startup costs? What are your living expenses? How are you going to break even? How are you going to pull that off? Because the last thing you want to be is undercapitalized. And then the final thing is, if you jump into the entrepreneurial world and start running a business, there are real responsibilities. You really got to work. And you got to start thinking about, okay, here's the support I'm going to get from the franchisor. Here's the support I'm going to get from my family, my friends. Here's the support I'm going to get from my network. And here's how all the responsibilities that flow into running a business are going to help me be successful.
Yeah, and I think a franchise allows you to have as we've talked about earlier, a better chance of success, right? But it's on you. You've got to get in there and leverage that business model, follow the system, leverage the support of the franchisor. I always tell people, if you're having trouble, reach out to the franchisor, ask ask for assistance. Leverage the other franchisees, right? You can be a great support for them. They can be great support for you as you're working through stuff. And certainly there are professionals that can help you, right? So if you're struggling, like when I started my first business, I actually hired a business coach. Right? I'd run $5 billion organizations at Ford. I hired a business coach just to make sure that I was doing things and improving faster. So you always want to put that infrastructure in place, put together a good plan, and then work the plan by leveraging support.
When you start thinking about what it takes to really master your transition and do so with confidence, whether the change is something you've chosen or one that's been thrust upon you, there's a real power in shifting your perspective from a challenge to an opportunity. And, I also want, those are really good advice on how you do that. But I also want to make sure we don't forget about the benefit of what's on the other side. And we talk about this time and time again. And I just want to mention 3 things with you, Pete, because we've talked about what is on the other side. Don't forget freedom.
Oh, absolutely. Like to be in control of your life. I mean, people will say, I want independence or I want to take control of my destiny, right? But that is the number one thing people are looking for, is they just want to control their life. And when you're in the corporate world, I'm sorry, you don't have control of that. And so if you can really go into this looking at, hey, what's my next path? And you want to have freedom, independence, take control of your destiny, whatever it is, then being a business owner could be a great path to achieving that freedom.
And then, you've always talked about your personal investment in yourself. I think you always talk about maybe 10% of what you earn goes back into yourself, and your relationship with Mastermind and Darren Hardy, continued investment there has really helped you. But if you really enjoy professional development, that's on the other side. You can, and I say that in a positive way, that's sitting there for you when you become an owner of a franchise. Because think of the excitement about building an entirely new business model for yourself. Think about the excitement of operating with great independence than you've ever had before. Think of the excitement of not having to ask a committee to make a decision, or actually jumping in and solving problems. People love to do that. Or what most people like is being a leader, building teams and developing people. All that stuff is there. So that's, you think of that opportunity is, another piece on the other side of a successful transition.
Right. I mean, you're either going backwards or forwards in terms of your growth. But being a business owner, you continue to grow because in business, it's never the same day, right? You're always opportunities to learn. There's problems to solve. There's people to help. There's people to, basically lead. And so if we can continue to grow, that makes it a richer life, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And that growth comes from networking. But, what I like to talk about in networking is your ability to create a culture within the network that you're creating, whether it's your customers or your employees. People love creating culture and building in success and developing people. Being able to create that culture that you've always wanted to create in your own business is inspiring and is super rewarding.
Well, and it's a requirement now to have a good culture, right? I mean, it's especially if you have hourly employees, it's not about $15 or $17 an hour. That's people aren't working for yes, I have to make money, but they want to be part of a purpose. They want to be part of an organization that stands for something, that's making a difference. And it doesn't have to be world-changing differences, but it's about this idea that we're doing something good. That's really important. And building your culture around doing something good, helping others, you're going to get a lot of good things come out of that.
Finally, turning that transition challenge into opportunity and thinking about cultivating hope, forgetting the entitlement. Don't forget, there's an opportunity to create your own wealth here. And, I love saying, hey, you want 100% of the profits? Guess what? Own your own business. They can be yours. So when you think of this wealth creation opportunity, think of it for your family. And often think of it as a legacy, all the stuff you've done with your children. Wealth comes in many different forms.
If you look at wealth in America, it has come through business ownership. There's just no question about it, right? And you got to understand that is how wealth is created. So you can leverage a franchise to certainly, be that entrepreneur to build that wealth. And that's what you and I do, right? Is we work with senior level executives that want to explore franchise business opportunities as a potential path, a way to basically transition out of what they're doing, or maybe it's a way to eventually escape the corporate world. So if you've ever thought about maybe taking the path or wanting to learn about, hey, becoming an entrepreneur through franchise ownership, I encourage you to connect with Dave, the Empowered Franchisee, or connect with me at Hire Yourself. 15 minutes. Take some time to just tell us a little bit about your situation, what you're going through. We'll tell you a little bit about how we can help you explore the path of franchise ownership.
And let's live in the truth. Transitions can be absolutely scary, but we can talk to you. You can talk to yourself, and we can help you figure out how to take that transition and turn it into an opportunity, turn it into hope, and turn it into something that's going to take you and your family into a better place.
And you and I have both lived it, right? We both have done that journey. And so we can tell you with confidence, we can help you through the process.
Thanks for talking about this awesome topic of mastering professional transitions with confidence. I appreciate it. I look forward to our listeners to subscribing to our podcast and sharing it with their friends, because if you know someone in transition, give them help. Reach out to them. Don't let them sit there alone, and we'll do the same. Even if they just want to talk, it's 15 minutes. Give us a call, book time with us. We look forward to helping.
Thanks for tuning in to the Escape and Empower podcast. We hope today's discussion has inspired you to consider franchise ownership as a path to living life on your own terms. Start your journey towards financial freedom and flexibility. Connect with Dave at empoweredfranchisee.com or Pete at hireyourself.com. Until next time.